Yeah, just 2 fingers, we can pick it up. I've been in the e-bike business for 10 years now, and there's some trends that are happening that you would expect. E-bikes are getting more cost-effective, their performance is getting better, the range is getting better. But there's one thing you probably wouldn't expect as a trend overall, is that they're getting heavier. If I look at all of the e-bikes that are in my shop and e-bikes that I've reviewed online for videos, I would say the average e-bike is probably 70 pounds or so, even if it's a small folding bike with a moderate sized battery for 20, 30, 40 miles. Now, of course, a lot of those are fat tire bikes, but some are not. They're fairly skinny tires, they're commuter bikes, and it's surprising if they're in the 60-pound range. We would almost consider that a lightweight bike. So to see a bike that is under 60 pounds is fairly uncommon unless you start spending a lot of money on a full carbon mountain bike like our Falcon over here. It comes in at 52 pounds, a very respectable weight. But why aren't we seeing things under 50 pounds, under 40 pounds? Would it be even possible to make what I would consider an affordable electric bike under 30 pounds? Well, one company says yes, and that's what they do. Urtopia seems to be obsessed with the fact that less is more. This is their brand new Carbon Fold 1, which comes in at a surprising 29 pounds. I would say this thing could probably be pedaled around without the motor on and would feel very much like a traditional folding bicycle. You wouldn't even notice the weight of the battery, which is in the seat post here, or the very small motor that's in the back. Now, of course, they do have to make some sacrifices to get the weight down low. One would be that the battery is pretty small in capacity. Remember, some of those other batteries I mentioned were going as large as 3 kilowatt hours, which, of course, those bikes are well over 100 pounds, equal to about 4 of these. That's 3,000 watt hours, whereas this one is only about 250 watt hours. I'd say our average e-bike battery on an entry-level bike is usually about double to triple this size. So definitely sacrificing some range here. Well, maybe, I'll get to that in a little bit. And then power-wise, if you got a smaller battery, you gotta have a smaller motor. Now, they claim this is a 500 watt motor. And if that's actually accurate, that's pretty good for such a lightweight, compact package. Now, at first glance, I thought these were 20-inch wheels. And to be honest, even if I look at them from here, I still think they're 20-inch, but they're not. They're actually 18 inches. They're just a hair smaller than that. So that was another place where they saved a tiny bit of weight. Now, something that's not a compromise is the fact that this is a full carbon frame. Carbon fork, everything here is carbon, and that's where they save a lot of that weight from, but retain strength and rigidity, of course. But they still keep the price reasonably low. It's under $2,000. Right now they're $18.99, which I think for a 100% carbon bike with a torque sensor actually sounds pretty good. Has hydraulic brakes, has basically features that I would normally expect on something this price. Really, it's just a matter of, are you willing to trade some range and power for weight? So even though power is not what this bike is geared for, or advertised for, of course, I want to test it. That's going to be a little bit tricky. This is one of those bikes that does not have a throttle, which I think is the right choice. When you have a smaller battery, it makes sense that you're going to want to pedal this all the time. This is something you actually want to exercise on, or at least put some input in to maximize the range. That's how they can advertise, up to 40 miles. And that's still accurate because you're not just wasting power on throttle only situations. So I got to do a couple of runs, one with just me pedaling, the second one where I try and pedal as close to the same power input as I possibly can, and then subtract the numbers to see where we're at. All right, so that's just a very nice, light, medium effort. Enough, I hope, to get the torque sensor going. I'm gonna snap a photo of that. So based on that, I got 755 watts, 24 pound-feet of torque, but this is not an exact science here. I need to deduct my input, so we really got about 650 watts, and I'm gonna say about 16 pound-feet of torque. So I know this is not gonna be the most powerful bike on the board. It's gonna be towards the bottom of the list, and that's okay. If we were to rank these bikes based on weight, this is gonna be number one. And despite that, it's still gonna beat some bikes on the list here. It's more power than the 10 ways, which is probably double the weight. It's more power than the Rad Power Rad Kick. And it's definitely rivaling the Ride One Up Roadster V3. So yes, this should make it up all the hills around town because we're forced to pedal. I guess now I got to take it outside, do some pedaling, get a little exercise, see if that's true. But overall, I just want to see, how does this bike ride? The wheels are pretty small at 18 inches. Is it going to feel squirrely? Is it going to feel stable? If you grab right here in the middle, I don't know if it was intended to be this way. There's like a nice little rectangle right there. It's like perfectly balanced. I can literally, let's try this. I'm going to do, can I pick it up? I'm going to use 2 fingers because I don't think I can quite get 1 finger under there. Yeah, just 2 fingers, we can pick it up. Urtopia asked if I could give a quick size comparison between the Carbon Fold and something like the Aventon bike that I showed you earlier. So you can see step through, obviously a tiny bit higher. This is kind of a mid step versus the low step through, but still very accessible, very easy to get on and off. You can see saddle heights are very similar. Overall length, it does look like it's a tiny bit shorter, but bear in mind that these are smaller diameter wheels. So if you look at where the axle is on this bike, and then we come back here, and you look at on the axle on this one, it's really probably only like 1.5 inches or so, maybe shorter as far as the actual wheelbase. But then it's gonna look shorter because the tire diameters, of course, are smaller front to back. So yes, a little bit smaller, a little more compact. Obviously, the tires are much smaller, but that's gonna help, of course, get that weight down. But handling wise, it doesn't feel like a small squirrely bike. It rides like a bigger bike, and that's probably one of my favorite things about it. All right, here goes nothing. Nice loud bell. So we got 8 speeds, Shimano shifter, yeah, Shimano Altus. All right, so the bike is on, but power is off. It's like riding a bike. One of the things you are missing on this is any form of suspension. This is going for lightweight. So carbon fork, carbon frame, and you are the suspension. Okay, so we've got a hill. Let's shift into 1 and just see what's the gearing range on this thing like? It's got a pretty decent gear. It's not like a super low granny gear. I'm gonna put the bike into eco. That helps, but it's pretty light. I would say it's light enough that even though this battery is tiny, the bike's so light, rolls so nice. Oh yeah, on the flat actually scoots along pretty good. You probably could do the 40 miles they advertise. I want a little bit more. Let's bump it up to number 2, or as they call it, tour. That's actually a pretty big jump up in power. Takes off pretty nice in tour. So it's really flat. I could see using eco mode. If you got some rolling hills, tour is actually not bad. I think I'm gonna want full power to get up this hill. But just for the challenge of it, I'm gonna start out in tour and see how it does, see how far I get. So let's use some lower gears. I'm in 3rd gear. Pedaling at a pretty good pace. Definitely putting some effort in. Going down to 2nd. You know, surprisingly, This is doable in tour. If I was in better shape, which it would be if I had the choice, I could do this. Even not being in shape, I can do this. I thought I was gonna have to use full power, so I still got smart. What does smart do? Is that supposed to be like sport? I don't know. That gives me a lot more. I got a little bit of a workout on my legs, but I mean, way better than a pedal bike and putting all the effort in. One of the things I mentioned earlier was finding out if the bike was squirrely or not. So 30 miles an hour with a camera sticking out on the handlebars, which normally can cause speed wobbles. Hands off right there, downhill, and this thing was rock solid, stable. This is a very nice handling bike. Speed wobble is caused by an oscillation in the frame, a slight wobble. And because this is made out of carbon, it's extremely stiff. Here's a kind of a long, gradual grade uphill. I'm gonna bump it up to the next one, which says smart. I picked up a little bit of speed, but mostly it just feels a lot easier. So up a gradual hill like this, you're gonna see about 15 miles an hour. That seems like that's the speed where it's happy to go. I'm gonna leave it on boost, because what I can do is pedal fairly lightly, still keep it above 14. I wanna see if we can get 20 out of this thing once the road flattens out. But I still got a bit of a climb ahead of me. This was the big test for me, is could you use a bike like this around a town like this, where we have a lot of hills, with only 500 watts and no throttle? So far, I'm leaning towards yes, more than I thought. So obviously boost mode is gonna use the most power, but let's just say I'm using 500 watts, which I'm not because I'm pedaling lightly. It's a torque sensor. I know it's got a little more, so I'm probably using more like 300 watts. 14, 15 miles an hour, let's say 15. That means 250 watt hour battery. Do the math, we'll get just under an hour. So worst case scenario, we could go uphill for somewhere between 10 and 15 miles at the rate I'm doing right now. It coasts really nice down the hills. Picks up speed right away. I'm at 22 miles an hour, just flying along. I don't even feel like the motor's helping me get up to 20. How do we get into settings? Unit time, brightness, e-bike info, walk speed, wheel, speed limit. So I was feeling like the thing just wanted to go like 15, 16 miles an hour. For some reason out of the box, this thing was in fact set to a max speed of 16 miles an hour. I have now bumped it up to 20. So boost mode takes us right up to 20 miles an hour easily. If I drop it down to smart with the same amount of effort, I still get about 18, 19. Once it flattens out, looks like I might still get 20 out of it. The pedal assist, again, it's a torque sensor, but not all programming is equal. But it's incredibly smooth, very nice. You've got a decent range of settings. In the tour mode, in the eco mode, the assist is very, very light. That is for the cyclists. It's not for me. I do feel like tour, which is only the second level, is a little more power than I expected, but it's really nice. Like, it's a very usable spot. I think that's going to be the sweet spot between power and range. A fellow cyclist, is it an e-biker? It was. He did not wave. For the sake of science, I should take it down the worst potholy road in the city of Grass Valley. So a lot of people may think of carbon as being extremely stiff. And it is. But depending on the design, it can be compliant in certain directions. You actually see carbon forks on aluminum frame bikes as opposed to an aluminum fork, because the carbon has a tiny bit of give, whereas a comparable aluminum fork will not. That's one reason people put carbon bars on their bicycles. It's not just for weight savings, it's also for comfort. So by having a carbon fork, carbon frame, carbon handlebar stem tube. Hello.
Let me ride that for a split second just to see what it's like. Or
Yeah, you can take it for a spin.
this one's cool. It looks like a dirt bike.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun. It's a wheelie machine.
Oh, that's cool.
And don't forget, whether you're pedaling or not, if you need to recover a little bit of your energy, get some carnivore Kyle jerky. So here's the display on the Urtopia. You can see it's very bright. I could see it in full sun really nicely. There's off, eco, tour, smart, which I still don't know why it's smart instead of sport, and boost mode. If you press the middle mode button, you can see your trip distance, average speed, riding time, max speed. You can see I got it up to 31 miles an hour. Not too bad for a little bike. Here you can actually see rider power and motor power. That's kind of a cool thing to see how much input you're putting in. I kind of gave you some figures on that while I was out and about, and then back to the main screen. So really basic. I still only used 1 bar out of 5, so maybe I'll get more range out of this than I thought. There's the bell, surprisingly loud. Trigger shifter on the right-hand side. I really like these foam grips. They're actually very comfortable. Hydraulic brakes from Tektro. Like I said before, they're only 160 millimeter rotors, but that is more than enough for this bike. It's so light, and you're only maxing out typically at 20. Downhills, you can go a bit faster. It's more than enough to get this thing stopping. Now, this front chainring does look pretty large, and it is 53 teeth, but it's balanced out really nicely with this rear cassette or freewheel. Yeah, that's actually a cassette. They put on the nicer stuff on this one. As I said, on the road, I could get this thing pedaling right up to 20 miles an hour very comfortably, a very nice cadence. I could really get it up a little over 20 if I wanted to put my own effort in. If there was one thing I personally would change, it looks like the largest gear in the back is a 32. I'd like to see it bumped up to maybe like a 34. Very, very small little thing. Probably something only I need, because I just don't have quite as much strength up the really steep hills. The bike is light enough, you can absolutely do it. I mean, I made it up every hill I tried. It comes with the rack and the fenders that are on the bike. There was zero rattling, zero noise as I was out riding it. There's the headlight up on the front. That also turns on the taillight in the back. It's not a brake light, surprisingly. It's just a running light. The only downside I can see to this light, it's really sleek and well integrated into the frame, but if you actually put something on this rack, you're gonna block the light completely. So it'd be nice if they had a light that mounted back here. I suppose since this is a folding bike, I should probably show you how it folds up. First, I'm gonna turn the power off to make sure it doesn't run away on me. So with these, you always wanna put the seat post down. That kind of acts as a stop on the ground. Pedals fold in. Kickstand up. The stem down. So that's gonna swing off to the side here. And finally, we're gonna do this middle latch. It's nice. Sometimes they stick out. This one's like flush in the frame when it's closed. That's cool. And then twist this around, and it has a magnetic latch to hold it together in this position. So when you go to pick this thing up, it's not gonna flop around and flop apart. So some final thoughts about the Urtopia Carbon Fold 1. Is it the best folding bike that I've ever filmed? Maybe. Best is a relative word. Even if somebody comes in the shop and says, what is the best bike you have in here? That's impossible to answer because I don't know what they want. Once I ask some questions about what type of riding they want to do, then usually I can tell them, well, for you, I think this is the best bike. So for the Urtopia, if you want a bike that folds and is light, if those are your two main priorities, then yes, this is the best folding bike that I have seen. It is way lighter than everything else I've seen, and it folds up very compact, very easily, thankfully because it is light, and it actually rides really nice. Like I said, very solid, very sturdy, rigid frame without being uncomfortable, no speed wobbles, very stable at all speeds. So it does a lot of really nice things. There are some compromises with that, of course. The battery. Hello. Hello. How are you doing? Overall, I'd say this bike rides really great. I was pretty impressed with it. I think Urtopia has another winner in the very ultra lightweight e-bike category. So if you're looking for something that doesn't weigh very much at all and still rides very much like a bicycle, but is at a very reasonable price for a carbon bike. Yes, there's cheaper bikes out there, but not this light and not full carbon, at least that I'm aware of, then you should definitely look at the link in the description and pick one of these up. And of course, if you're local to Grass Valley, California, here at Area 13, we are a dealer for Urtopia, so you can come into our store, test ride this very bike, and try it out for yourself before you buy.